Hello and welcome to the Horrorcast series. This is episode 5. Today's accounts are real happenings that occurred with a family. A sweet family of 4 who decided to move out of the city and into the outskirts, where they bought a new mansion. So let's dive into the story as it's gonna be really spine chilling. So stay with us until the end, and please subscribe to our channel, like our video, and please give us your feedback in the comments down below. Our family always believed that home was where the heart is, until we moved to an old mansion on Cedar Hollows. When my husband Daniel and I stumbled upon the estate, its grandeur was only surpassed by its mystery. The Victorian mansion, surrounded by dense woods and shrouded in fog, promised both a new beginning and an escape from the bustle of the city. We were eager to raise our 2 children, our daughter Mia, who was 10 at the time, and Lucas, who was just 7. We wished to raise them in a quieter place, but the promise of tranquility soon turned into a nightmare. The first night in the mansion was unnerving. After a long day of unpacking and exploring the sprawling grounds, I retired to a new master bedroom with Daniel. We tried to laugh off the creaks and groans of the old house as it settled into the darkness. Yet, as the clock struck midnight, I awoke to the soft sound of a lullaby, a gentle, almost mournful tone, drifting through the corridor. At first, I thought it was a memory from my childhood, but then I realized it was coming from somewhere in the house. I got out of bed and followed the sound, Daniel trailing behind me. The melody led us to a narrow staircase that descended into what appeared to be a forgotten part of the house. The walls were lined with faded portraits of stern-faced ancestors, their eyes seeming to follow our every move. Just as the lullaby reached its climax, the music abruptly stopped, and a chilling silence took its place. In that moment, the cold touched me, an icy draft that wasn't caused by an open window. I turned to Daniel, who looked just as uneasy, and we retreated back upstairs, hearts pounding. Well, we went back to our bedroom that night and slept. The next morning, Mia and Lucas were oddly subdued. Over breakfast, Mia confessed in a hushed voice that she had seen a lady in white roaming the hallways at night, her face obscured by a veil of mist. Lucas clutched his favorite toy, eyes wide, insisting that someone had whispered his name from beneath his bed. We tried to reassure them, attributing it to a bad dream or their vivid imagination. Yet, as the day wore on, subtle signs of the house influence began to appear. In a quiet of the afternoon, while Daniel was away running errands, I discovered small handprints on the dusty window pane that did not belong to any of us. In the parlor, the old grand piano played a single note on its own, as if urging me to listen to a forgotten memory. Each room seemed to harbor echoes of voices long silenced, a whisper here, a creak there, that made the air feel heavy with secrets. Compelled by mounting dread, I began researching the manor's history at the local library. I learned that the mansion was built in the early 1900s by a reclusive family whose fortunes vanished overnight. Rumors spoke of a tragic love affair, betrayal, and a mysterious disappearance that had cursed the estate. The family was said to have been tormented by the spirit of a woman whose lover had abandoned her, leaving her to die in sorrow within these very halls. A restless spirit, it was whispered, haunted the corridors, searching for lost love and vowing vengeance on those who dare disturb her eternal grief. Armed with these chilling details, I decided to confront the haunting. One stormy evening, I gathered my courage and, with the children tucked safely in bed, ventured into the mansion alone. I followed the corridor towards the source of the whispering, a narrow hall lined with tarnished silver and dusty mirrors. As lightning illuminated the room, I caught a glimpse of movement in one of the mirrors, a pale figure standing behind me. I spun around, but the hall was empty. My heart hammered as I slowly returned to the mirror. There, etched in the glass, were words written in elegant script. "For love betrayed, souls are bound," it said. My skin crawled as I realized that the manor's haunting was not merely a series of random ghostly events. It was a manifestation of a centuries-old tragedy that had seeped into every brick and beam. That night, the atmosphere in the manor grew quite oppressive. Daniel and I huddled together in the master bedroom when the walls began to tremble. Faint, ghostly figures materialized around us, translucent apparitions of a bygone era, their eyes filled with sorrow and accusations. The air was thick with the sound of soft weeping in desperate whispers, echoing the words of the betrayed love. I felt an unseen force brush against my cheek as a disembodied voice hissed, "You cannot leave." Daniel tried to stand up, but an inexplicable weight pinned him to bed. The figures closed in. One of them a woman in a flowing white dress with tears streaking cheeks. She reached out with skeletal fingers, and her eyes locked onto mine, a haunting plea for redemption and retribution. The horror escalated as children's voices echoed from down the hall. Mia cried out that the lady in white was calling her, and Lucas whimpered that the shadow beneath his bed were reaching for him now. I realized with a dawning terror that the curse was not confined to the past. It had taken root into our family's very presence, feeding on our fear and grief. Desperate, I scrambled to break the grip of the supernatural forces. I grabbed an old family heirloom, a locket that once belonged to the lady in white, and I recited a prayer I barely remember from childhood. The figures recoiled, their forms flickering like dying candle flames. For a fleeting moment, silence returned, and I thought we had triumphed over the curse. But as dawn broke and the storm subsided, the manor remained forever changed. The whispers lingered, and every creak in the night carried the weight of untold stories. We eventually left Cedar Hollow, but the terror we experienced there never truly left us. Sometimes in quiet moments, I catch a glimpse of a white silhouette in a corner of my eye, or hear a faint lullaby that sends shivers down my spine. The mansion still stands, a monument to love, betrayal, and the haunting legacy that binds us all. Our ordeal taught us that some curses are not easily broken, and that the past can reach out through the shadows. We had to leave our new house for our children, the house where we dreamt of spending a life in peace and quiet. This is a true story what happened with me and my family. Although there are many things I missed, but for now, it's still giving me goosebumps as I write this story to you. So thank you for sharing your story. It was a good decision to move out of that place, saving your children and your family. So let's move to our second story now. This account is also a real incident that happened to a family in northern England. Let's dive directly into the story. I'll never forget the day our family moved into a new place. A sprawling estate tucked away in the mist-shrouded hills of northern England. My husband Mark and I dreamt of a fresh start. After years of city life, envisioning our two children, Emma, she was 12, and Oliver, who was just 8, thriving in a place where history and nature intertwined. What we didn't know was that this place was not just a relic of a bygone era, but a living testament to grief and betrayal. From the moment we stepped onto the estate's overgrown drive, an unsettling chill clung to the air. The manor loomed ahead, a crumbling Gothic structure with broken gargoyles and shattered stained windows. Despite its grandeur, something about its silence seemed to scream. At first, we dismissed the odd creaks, the persistent drafts that whispered through the hallway, as the quirks of an old architecture. But soon, it became impossible to ignore. Our first night was restless. I lay awake in our guest bedroom while Mark, usually the rock of our family, paced outside in the dim glow of the corridor. At precisely 3:15 a.m., a delicate sound drifted from the east wing, a tinkling like shards of glass colliding softly, accompanied by a voice that seemed to sigh in sorrow. I crept to the window and peered out, half expecting to see a figure in white dress. Instead, I saw only the long, desolate path leading to the overgrown gardens. Still, the sound persisted, a melancholy symphony that filled me with inexplicable dread. The next morning, while Mark prepared breakfast, Emma and Oliver timidly approached me. Emma's eyes were wide as she whispered about a mirror in the parlor, a grand, ornate mirror that wasn't in any of the inventory lists we'd received. Oliver insisted he'd seen reflections that weren't our own in the mirror. Chilled by their descriptions, I ventured into the parlor alone. The room was vast and dim, lit only by the muted light of rainy afternoon filtering through the dusty drapes. In the center hung the mirror, a massive, intricately framed piece with faces carved onto its borders. As I gazed into it, I swore I saw a fleeting glimpse of a woman standing behind me, her eyes pleading, her expressions twisted in anguish. I spun around immediately, but the room was empty. My heart pounded as I could feel an icy presence settling in the air. I left quickly, unsure if it had been the trick of the light or something far more sinister. That evening after dinner, I sat with Mark in the study, poring over old documents we'd found in dusty chests in the attic. Among them were faded letters, a brittle journal detailing the manor's tragic history. It told of a matriarch named Isabel, a woman betrayed by her husband, condemned to witness the slow disintegration of her family and spirit. The final entry, written in trembling hands, ended with a single desperate plea. "Let my sorrow be seen, let my mirror show the truth," it said. As I read, a distant soft knock echoed through the house. Startled, I followed the sound down a long corridor, the journal clutched in my hand. The knocking led me to a small locked door tucked away behind an ancient tapestry. With trembling fingers, I managed to pry it open. Inside was a narrow room filled with old mirrors, each one cracked and worn. Their surfaces were clouded, yet in some of them I caught fleeting images of a pale figure with tear-streaked cheeks. The sound of whispering grew louder, as I realized, with mounting horror, that each mirror seemed to speak fragments of Isabella's pain, as if the very glass was trying to tell its own tragic tale. In the following nights, the manor's influence began to tear at the seams of our family. Emma grew withdrawn, her once bright curiosity replaced by a haunted gaze. Oliver, usually full of mischief, started speaking of a lady of mirrors who visited him in his dreams, urging him to remember the broken. Mark, normally steadfast, became increasingly agitated, often found staring blankly into the spaces, as if he was listening to voices only he could hear. One stormy night, as lightning illuminated the estate in strobing burst, I awoke to the sound of anguish, the cries echoing from the attic. Rushing upstairs, I discovered that the long forgotten room of mirrors had transformed into a chamber of torment. The mirrors glowed with an eerie light, each reflecting scenes of unimaginable sorrow. A family torn apart, a woman wandering endlessly in despair, and a mirror that seemed to pulsate the dark energy. The temperature dropped, and I felt as if unseen hands were clawing at my back, desperate to pull me into the world of endless grief. Desperate to protect my family, I called out to Mark, but when I turned, he was gone. Panic surged through me as I raced through the corridors, only to find him standing in front of a grand mirror in the hall. His eyes were vacant, his face pale, and his lips moved in silent, frantic repetitions of the word Isabel. I tried shaking him, but his grip was cold and unyielding, as if possessed by the spirit of the tormented matriarch. In that moment I realized that the curse of Blackwood Manor was not confined to its walls. It was seeping into our very souls, fracturing the bonds of our family. Determined to reclaim our lives, I resolved to break the curse. The next morning I went to the church and talked to the priest, who kindly agreed to come visit me. As he came that evening, he immediately left without saying a word. As I followed him, and I caught him on the road, I asked him what had happened. Why wouldn't he come inside? And he said he needs to prepare, and he will visit us the next day. I asked him further questions, but he refused to answer anything, saying only that do not spend another night in this place and leave as soon as possible. Afraid, I had no choice but to take my family and go and spend the night in a hotel. The next day we visited the estate with the father and 3 other men. They started lighting candles and cleansing the house with the holy water. As they started their rituals, a collage of faces, screams, and shattered memories swirled around us. Desperate to be freed, their voices were sounding of grief and anger. I felt their anguish like a physical weight, a crushing reminder of what had been lost. In that moment, I realized that the curse was not something to be vanquished. It was a legacy of pain that had claimed generations. I fell to my knees, tears streaming down my face as the spectral figures closed in, and then, as if it answered to my despair, a sudden calm fell over the room. I don't know if it was because of the rituals of the priest and the men, or if it was an answer to my despair. The images faded, and the mirror settled into an opaque stillness. The following morning, Mark slowly returned to himself, though his eyes retained a haunting glimmer that I could never forget. Emma and Oliver too began to recover, yet their laughter was forever tinged with a quiet sadness. We eventually left that place, unable to bear the weight of its cursed legacy. But even now, as I sit in my modest apartment far away, I sometimes catch a glimpse of a cracked mirror in the corner of my eyes, a subtle reminder of the horrors we endured. That place remains a dark monument to a family's tragedy, its mirrors shattered yet still holding the echoes of unspoken sorrows. And though we escaped its confines, The whispers of that cursed place continue to haunt my dreams, a constant reminder that some curses are never truly broken. They simply live on, waiting for the next family to call it home. So this was my family's account. As I write this story to you, my hands still tremble and I'm still very much afraid. I may not be able to sleep tonight. Please share this on your channel if you like. So thank you, Cynthia, for sharing your real story. This was really spine-chilling. I would like to ask the audience to please leave your comments down below for both Cynthia and Marie, who shared their real-life horror accounts with us. I would also like to ask you to please subscribe to our channel, like our video and share it with your friends and family. And please give us your feedback in the comments down below, as they serve as our motivation to keep bringing these real-life horror accounts from around the world to you. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time.